Hi, Redeemer. Donovan here. Welcome to this week's Frequently Asked Questions. Again, I'm going to aim to keep this under 3 minutes. I should be able to get this done today. This is part 2 of why don't you preach usually line by line, verse by verse. You got to watch the first video where I kind of define that. And so I'm not going to go through all that. But why don't I usually? And I left it on the last video. I said it's unbiblical. And I know that's a bit inflammatory, but that's the way I am. And what I mean by that is basically that's not how I see Jesus and the apostles teaching the Bible. What I see them doing is being constrained by the truth of God as revealed in Scripture and by a greater theology that they've built from that, and then speaking truths into moments and pulling verses from a psalm or from an Old Testament passage, and I don't see them expositionally preaching. So certainly you could say, well, Donovan, you're no Jesus, and that's true. So I think I'm going to be more helped to follow his example, follow Paul's example. At the end of the day, the whole line by line, verse by verse thing is it's a methodology that can be helpful and can work. So another reason I don't do it all the time is I don't think it's necessarily always the best way to teach. As a teacher, and many of you have experience in teaching, you know there's a lot of different ways and approaches to get your message across, and I don't think there's just one way. I think it would be erroneous to say this is the way to teach. I think that's sometimes the way to teach and sometimes not. Let's see, I have some other things. I think there are arbitrary conclusions about or assumptions about what constitutes a passage or even the main point. Right? So if expository preaching means to preach the main point of the passage, like what's the passage? Is it a chapter? Is it a verse? Is it the whole book? You know, is it a paragraph? Some people would say it's a paragraph. I think those are human categories and assumptions that aren't necessarily appropriate. And then the main point, what's the main point? I mean, Paul just rattles off truth after truth, and just read Ephesians 1. What's the main point? Well, I think maybe it's that God created the world to show his grace, but man, there's so many little words and phrases in there that they are just explosive. And sometimes I want to take a whole week and just talk about predestination, right? Or just one word that he threw out. And so in some ways, I would argue I might even be going deeper, because I'm just going to settle in on one idea for the entire message. So let's see what else. Okay, well, maybe let me end with this. What will guard me from truth then if I'm not doing consistently line by line, verse by verse preaching? And I think it's the community, it's broader doctrine, and it's the Spirit ultimately of God. My method is not going to guard error. Any method can be subject to error. So there it is. A few seconds over. Hope that's helpful. Let me know if this is something you'd love to discuss more. God bless you. See ya.